I want to introduce Mette Shenker. She's the Senior Principal and Design Director at SmithGroup. She has over 20 years of experience. Mette Shenker creates dynamic, inclusive environments that promote well-being and adaptability even as markets change. And boy, have they changed, right? Her approach to design is deeply influenced by her early pursuit of film direction in Denmark, drawing creative inspiration from cinematic storytelling and everyday experiences. So I am going to hand it over to Mette.
Thank you so much for the warm welcome. Yes, so as AJ was saying that my native country is Denmark, so if you can hear an accent, that is because I'm from there. Next slide. So in my 20-year career, I've always been inspired by nature. And I've always asked myself, why is it that I am always gravitating to nature when I work with my clients, when I work with the staff? Getting inspiration from nature has always been a topic of my mind. And I didn't actually know why before I actually dove into environmental neuroscience. And when I asked other architects and designers about this, they didn't even really know why either. It just feels good. And it felt, when they were applied to spaces, beautiful, and it created a lot of delight and joy. So I had to look at, without architects and designers, look outside the field and go to scientists, if you go to the next slide. And I love history. So I'm going to give you a little bit of a history lesson. So bear over with me, because it's a little bit dry, but it's also very important to know. So in the last 75 years, scientists has been looking into why space is important to us. And it was not the case before Kurt Lewin that came up with his field theory in the 1940s to the 1950s. Before that, space was basically something that the behavior of an individual was not really deemed by space, but something that came from our inner dialogue, or it was our own fault, or behavior came from our psyche. Space was not really affecting us. And here it's almost laughable, because we know, just being here at the Mart, how much space is affecting us. Steve and Rachel Kaplan in the 1989 to 91 started to look at what is actually going on in the brain. Kurt Lewin didn't have any MRI scanner, so he couldn't put us into a brain scanner to see what was actually going on. But what they did was to put people into a scanner, and they could see that the brain was lighting up as soon as people saw images of nature. If they had put people out on a walk, or even imagery, yes, it actually was restorative. It took it improved concentration, mood, and cognitive performance. So Mark Berman was actually more interested, because he knew all about this. And Mark Berman is a psychologist from the University of Chicago. And what he was questioning is why that is happening. Why is it that the brain is lighting up and we get really cognitive performances out of being applied to nature? We also know from our healthcare environments that patients heal better as soon as they get access to daylight and nature. And he was questioning why. If you go to the next slide. So he discovered something called fractals, and the way that it's a mathematical perception of nature. And what he discovered was that when he took imageries of nature and pixelated it down to the smallest element you can think about, he started to see these repetitive patterns called fractals. And he also did that with cityscapes. And what he discovered, that cityscapes doesn't have it. he put people out on a walk in the park. He actually took a city park in Ann Arbor and let people walk, and he let them walk in rain, snow, cold, and everything, and they didn't even need to like it. But when they came back, what they discovered was that people could have cognitive memory. He made tests where that was very complex, and their memory actually was better after just a walk in the park. What he also discovered was that it didn't happen when people actually exposed too much to cityscapes. So what are fractals? If you go to the next slide. It is, and I just need my little cheat sheet here because it's a little complicated. They are self-similar pattern, meaning they look virtually similar no matter how you zoom in and zoom out. They actually occur inside ourselves. They are the veins of the blood vessels, and they occur, our brain is fractals, and if you go to the next slide. And they also occur in coastlines. It occurs in waves. And next slide. And it occurs in tree branches and leaves. And if you know the shape of a leaf and you look at these little branches that goes inside a leaf, that is fractals. And a snowflake, that is a fractal as well. Next slide. And also clouds consist of fractals, and mountain ranges, when you walk outside nature, is fractals. If you go to the next slide. So nature gives us a lot in our sensorial orchestra. It gives us a lot of sound, touch, visual, and scent. I recently had a project where we were using nature again as our inspiration, and I asked my team members, have you ever touched a tree? And everybody had. What about you guys? Have you touched a tree? Yes, everybody has touched a tree. And it's in a way weird, isn't it? I mean, that we actually, every one of us has touched a tree at some point in our lives. So this orchestra is fine-tuned. We should take care of it, and we need to have it well balanced throughout our lives. But what is happening right now, then if you go to the next slide, is that orchestra is blasting constantly. And sometimes it's great. I mean, sometimes it's great to have all our senses be satisfied and saturated. It fills us with fascination. I mean, first time I went to Times Square, I was in awe. I've never seen anything like that. I came from Denmark, where everything seems very quiet and very small, and then coming to a place like this, it was just like, oh my God. And it's very captivating, and it gives us a dopamine boost. And as you guys know, right now, if you go to the next slide, we have Times Square every day, every single day in our pockets. The way that we treat our brain is basically being at Times Square 24/7, constantly. And I don't know about you guys. I don't like to be in Times Square 24/7, but that is actually what we are exposing our brain to. And in a way, I feel I'm guilty myself. I know when I'm coming home tired from work, I'm doom scrolling, and 2 hours later, I'm basically fried my brain because I'm looking at Instagram. And I can't remember what I have seen. If somebody asks me the day after what I've seen, I don't know. So I feel that looking at what the Kaplan said, directed attention fatigue, that somehow we are losing something in ourselves. We lose the connection to each other, and we lose the ability to have a fine-tuned orchestra. If you go to the next slide. So luckily we have nature. And nature, when I'm calling nature, it's not really, we don't need a lot of it. We can actually just go a walk in the park, like Mark Berman was saying. And what the fractals and these biophilic environment are doing to us is that it boosts our memory. It has emotional salience. And the Japanese, I don't know if there is anybody here from Japan, But, okay, yeah, you guys figured it out at one point and I didn't get it. I was just like, what is that hoopla with the Japanese of the forest shower? I was just like, what the heck is that? But you got it, and you knew what it was about. And our ancestors also knew about this. They knew that they had to actually be able to see danger and be surrounded by soft fascination, because otherwise they wouldn't be able to see a tiger come, which is directed attention. So the balance of complexity and predictability that fractals are doing is giving a brain spa, basically. So how do we use all this information as architects and designers? If you go to the next slide. I created some building blocks, or let me say, I have gotten help to these building blocks. If you go to the next slide. Christopher Alexander, probably most of you are familiar with Christopher Alexander. He's a British architect. And he created these 15 fundamental properties that's found in nature. He didn't mention fractals, by the way, but he understood them. And I want to point out the local symmetry, the echoes with the mountain range, as I talked about, and the interlocking patterns that fractals are consistent of. Next slide. And what I did, I created a material palette that is based on nature and fractals, with patterns, shape, forms, and colors. The patterns are interlocking, and these carpets actually from Mohawk. I don't know if there's anybody here from Mohawk. That is because it's actually a carpet that is called fractals. So they got it, and they actually studied this. I also want to take a shout out to Interface that is here, because they actually are also looking into tree branches and these repeating patterns. They don't call it fractals, but it's very similar to what Mohawk has done. And then create shapes that is complex and repetitive, but has balance. Natural materials, of course, tree, using a natural wood with the patterns, and the forms and shapes in stone, especially natural stone. I want to point out the shapes, going back to Mark Berman's imagery of these, where he put the pictures into these dense pixelations. And what he discovers was that people, when asked, that the shapes that is curvatry was found intriguing for people and calming as well. So I don't know, I have done this for the last probably 10 years, and I have not known that it actually was a science behind it, that in people's brain, it actually boosts a calmness and focus. And the colors, if you go to the next slide, what he also asked people about, what is your color preferences? And it is the color between blue and green. It looks mostly green on this screen here, but it actually blue and green, and then of course in our Western Hemisphere, that is colors that we surround ourselves quite a lot. Next slide. So how does restorative biophilic environment, how can they look like? And I have a few examples I want to show you. Next slide. So this is the city of Sunnyvale, and in California we love our redwood trees. We celebrate them and we walk in them quite a lot. We can't basically avoid our redwood trees. So this is a celebration of a redwood tree. It has a big trunk, and people can sit below it, and then they walk up, meandering up, and it has these organic shapes, and the patterns is these self-repetitive patterns that is a nod to fractals, and you walk up to the treetop. So very, very biophilic place to go. Next slide. This is another project. This is a California's technology of science, and this is for neuroscience scientists, this space. So quite daunting to create. Again, self-repeating pattern, organic shapes, of course a nod to branches inside this community space, and organic shapes, and then the blue and the green palette as well. There was not a lot of access to daylight, unfortunately, in the planning of this project. So what we did was to create a dome above that emulates the sky, and it's blue. And if you go to the next slide. This was a project for a big technology client in Silicon Valley, and it's just got published in Interior Design magazine, so we're pretty proud about this. But again, the arches that is repeating, the blue and the green colors, and very sort of a nod to a petal, a big flower, and very joyful flower that is a light fixtures above this little seating area. The next slide. And lastly is this image from our office in San Diego. So we try to live our biophilic moments ourselves. Lots of plants. We love our plants. We have a plant lady that comes in and makes sure that they look green every day. And this little area here is a sanctuary, and we call it the nest that sits between our workplaces. And it's our little tree house. It's a little greenery, and it, again, has the blue and green colors. These can slide out, that has these self-repeating patterns, as well as interlocking and organic shaped light fixtures that sits above. So my question here on this ending slides, and thinking about what is the next 75 years are going to look like to make human-centric spaces. And I don't know, I don't have the answers, but with the artificial intelligence and the world of that, are we going to design for robots and design for them? So thank you so much.